No more will I have to explain which powerful engrams to get before another type of powerful engram, or figuring out if you should run the raid if it's a sunny day or a rainy day or anything like that. Leveling in this new era of the game appears to be much more simplified, but I'm still going to review what to do for those of you who might be coming back after a long break, or maybe you're just brand new and you want to know what's up. The biggest change to leveling is that it is now almost completely uncapped. You don't need to look for powerful drops, pinnacle drops, anything like that. You can grind as much as you want to get all the levels you want. Not only that, but certain activities will allow you to target farm a specific item slot. So if you have an item slot that is lagging behind in levels, odds are you'll be able to select the activity that is dropping the item you need, complete a run of it with at least a B rating, and I'll explain what that means in a moment, and then get that item so that you can increase your levels. Everyone starts at level 10 now. As you play, you will earn drops from doing pretty much anything at all, and these drops will slowly increase in power. You can infuse these items into your current gear with an enhancement core, which will bring up that item's gear level to whatever the infused piece's item level was. This is called infusion. It works no different to how it has worked for the past few years. It's just that now you don't need upgrade modules to do it, just enhancement cores until you hit level 200. Your first 100 levels or so will probably be earned in the campaign, assuming you purchased the campaign. Otherwise, I imagine the majority of them will come from the portal, which we'll discuss soon. Doing the legendary version of the campaign is more lucrative because you get more item drops, which translates to more levels. I finished the legendary campaign around level 125 or something like that. I know of people who finished much higher than that, although I'm not exactly sure what the discrepancy was there. Your first goal is to hit level 200. From level 10 to 200, you can do anything you want and you will get levels. So let's talk about how you'll mainly be leveling from now on. The portal. The portal is broken down into a few subsections: Solo, Fireteam, Pinnacle, and Crucible, and all have their own activities within. Solo is a new playlist with things like lost sectors or sections of maps that have been turned into a solo activity. Fireteam is similar to the Vanguard Ops playlist, both in activity selection and difficulty, at least at base difficulty anyway. Pinnacle consists of things like exotic missions or things that take a little bit longer to complete and or are more complex. And Crucible is PvP, not much changing there, although you can level purely through PvP if you would like. In the PvE sections, when you select an activity, you will be given an estimated rating and score. Early on, this is likely to be the B grade, which will get you some kind of an item drop at some kind of a level at some kind of a tier. The highest rank you can get to is A. In order to get higher scores, you will likely need to add negative modifiers to the activity run in order to give your score a higher multiplier. When you select a negative modifier, the game will adjust its calculation of what grade it thinks you're going to get. It also assumes that you're completing the activity within a certain time range. You can also add positive modifiers to increase your personal strength, but as you get higher in levels and you take the difficulty up, these positive modifiers will take away score multipliers because you're making it easier for yourself. So for the purposes of leveling, the most ideal situation would be to see what combination of negative and positive modifiers will make you the strongest while also making sure that you hit the highest grades possible. When you're first starting the level grind, this is very, very simple, but as you increase in level, it gets more difficult, although a leveling meta is starting to develop. A quick example. I'm around level 180 something in this clip, and I'm in the advanced section of the portal. As you can see, I only need one, maybe two negative modifiers to get myself to an A rank, neither of which is that big of a deal, but all of the positive modifiers do not decrease my score at this low of a level. So getting from 100 to 200 in the portal, while a little time consuming, will not present much gameplay difficulty. So the portal has a bunch of activities for you to pick from, but some of them will have a green engram icon, which means they will give an extra drop upon completion. If you're trying to get the most out of your leveling experience, you should try to focus on these bonus loot activities because they just straight up give you more loot for doing nothing differently. And again, if you're looking for a specific item slot, hunt it down in the portal to target that piece directly. If you don't have any green engrams that you can do, you are mostly free to do whatever you want, but more on that in a moment. Once you hit 200, things change a little bit. To level up from 200 up to the cap, you will need unstable cores, which are essentially just enhancement cores, but from the level 200 to level 550 range. They come from similar sources as enhancement cores do, dismantling gear, the seasonal hub reward track, things like that. The main difference, besides their icon, is that unstable cores are reset every expansion, so you can't just hoard a giant stockpile of cores anymore. In addition, every expansion will reset everyone back to level 200. If you didn't hit 200, then you're not going to be adjusted. Early on in an expansion, unstable cores might be a bit more rare to get, but even this early on, just from collecting stuff from the season pass and the seasonal hub, I have had a good jump start on cores, and I don't think it'll present a huge problem, economically speaking. Not only that, but once you hit 200 or once you unlock higher difficulties in the portal, getting those A ranks will get a little more difficult because the modifiers change up, the positive ones take score away from you, but the game plan is still the same. Ideally, you are making the activity as hard as you are capable of completing or willing to play, while trying to maximize rewards and minimize negative effects on yourself. For example, I just hit 200 power. I'm loading up a solo ops, and I'm checking to see which negative modifiers affect me the least, but give the most amount of score. Right now, that is the locked loadout modifier, which for a solo ops activity is basically irrelevant because I'm not going to swap anything. It's also giving an insane amount of bonus multiplier to the point where it's the only thing I need to do to hit an estimated A rank. I do anticipate Bungie making locked loadouts not worth as much multiplier going into the future, but it's just one example of trying to minimize the negatives while maximizing your points. Something that might seem confusing when you start hitting these new level thresholds is an issue I ran into recently. I just unlocked Expert difficulty. However, both Advanced and Expert, when I set a specific activity to estimate the A rank score, offered similar rewards. And indeed, they gave those rewards. So for the purposes of efficient leveling, go with the easier option. There is no reason to run an expert solo ops when it's going to take me 10 minutes longer to complete it versus the advanced version if my ultimate goal is to just get levels. Eventually, the scales should tip into expert's favor in terms of it being a better option to run. But until then, run the thing that's going to get you your items the fastest and or the easiest. The mid-season cap on levels is 450. So if you manage to hit 450 before then, you gotta wait until the mid-season update. That being said, it appears that hitting 450 by the mid-season update is a task for only the most hardcore of players who dedicate dozens of hours per week playing the game. Not only that, but once you hit level 400, how quickly you level will slow down a bit. Therefore, I don't think the primary goal of a new Destiny release should necessarily be get max level, like it used to be because it used to be a lot easier, but rather get as high of a level as you are willing to go get. Do not feel pressured to try to hit 550 in a season. At its core, that is how leveling now works in the game. If I'm to sum it up, how to level is you run stuff in the portal, increase your difficulty, and you will get levels over time. Now, let's talk about tiered loot, since I imagine the question you might be asking is, what is the point of leveling? As you level up, the tier of the loot that you will have access to will increase. Loot has been split into 5 tiers now, with 1 being the lowest, tier 5 is the highest, and only really available at the endgame difficulties and endgame power levels. For armor, as you increase in tiers, you will get more stats on said gear. A tier 1 item might only have like 55 of a stat, but a tier 3 will have mid to high 60s. So as you increase in level, you will gain more access to more stats, which makes you more powerful. For weapons, as you increase in tiers, you will get more enhanced traits and perks, everything. Tier 1 weapons are essentially just regular drops that you might remember from the past. Tier 2 enhances both of the main perks. Tier 3 gives you more perk options. Tier 4 enhances your mods, magazine, and barrels. And Tier 5 gives you even more perk options, enhances the origin trait, and gives some unique cosmetic effects. Higher tier stuff can also be found doing more difficult world tiers on Kepler or whatever the new destination is in a future expansion. You want to do this through the time latch missions, for Kepler specifically. For some reason, doing the missions from the flag on Kepler itself while you're on the higher difficulties doesn't give any loot at all. Not sure what's going on there. So if you want to run missions, do it through this menu. We also have the new gear system, although it too is not directly related to leveling, but essentially Bungie is trying to incentivize people for using literal new gear. You can tell if it's new, or in the case of older exotics, featured with this blue icon in the top left. The more new gear you use, the greater the benefits that you get, which you can see by hovering over the artifact. New gear loses its new gear tag when a new expansion starts though. Finally, Guardian ranks have been adjusted quite a lot. They're now based more on the portal system than anything else, so many people have been reset back quite a few ranks. Fortunately, it is not that arduous of a task to get more Guardian ranks. However, I mention them because it's mentioned in the patch notes for Edge of Fate that your Guardian rank can affect the quality of rewards from mid-activity chest drops, or loot that drops, and randomly dropped rewards from challenging enemies within portal activities. So I see very little reason to not ensure that you are leveling your Guardian rank as much as possible. It is definitely much more relevant now, and the earlier levels are really not that hard to do. Now, those watching the game a little more closely during the first couple of days of the expansion, maybe you've been watching some live streams, you might have noticed that a lot of people are just spamming the same activity over and over again. For the past couple of days, that was the mission Encore, which is the exotic mission from episode 1. Why? Well, in the Pinnacle Ops playlist, we have some activities, but we also have this timer icon and some dots, which signify how long Bungie thinks it takes the average person or group to complete that activity. In Fireteam Ops, the timer is always a 2 out of 5. Each activity takes roughly the same amount of time to complete, which I do think is pretty true. In Pinnacle Ops, Bungie thinks something like The Whisper is about 10 to 15 minutes, Kel's Fall is around 25 to 30 minutes, and Encore at over 40 minutes. And they compensate accordingly. The shorter the estimated time for an activity completion is, the fewer drops you get. The longer, the more items you can get. So Whisper gets 1 drop, Kel's Fall gets 2, and Encore gets 4. Now, I plan on discussing my opinion on this topic in my first impressions video, but for now, I'm just going to keep this very information-driven. High-level teams were able to complete Encore in around 15 to 20 minutes, if not even faster. Not only that, but Encore also had some drops in the middle of the activity and sometimes had a bonus item. So you're actually getting 6 to 7 drops in 15 to 20 minutes. This is an insanely high amount of items from even a 25 to 30 minute run compared to other things on offer, creating what I've been calling the Lake of Shadows effect, where people simply want to run the fastest and or easiest activity for the most amount of loot possible. That being said, Bungie has already noticed this discrepancy and is doing something about it, although what exactly they are doing is to be determined. I'm guessing they're probably going to reduce the drops by 1. When daily reset hits, things get shuffled, and as a result, some activities are going to have some bonuses that make them the most efficient leveling-based activity of the day or of the week. Ideally, there is no best activity to run, and you're just able to play anything that you want without really worrying about having to be the most efficient, but there will likely always be some sort of best option for a given day. What that activity is just depends on what is on offer for that day. So you might want to check in on a live stream or a Discord server to see if there's something that is the most efficient for that day. Again, my opinion on all of this stuff will come in a future video. Don't forget about Fireteam Power as well. Fireteam Power brings up your level to within 5 levels of the highest leveled person in your team. That means you can still play with your friends who are way ahead of you on levels, but your drops will still be at your level, so you're not able to skip a lot of the grind just by playing with some high-level friends. Also, don't forget that levels are account-wide. When you swing to a second character, the level of gear you get will be based on the highest level stuff that you own across all characters, which makes catching up on alts much easier. I've received multiple confirmations that running the Legend campaign again on a second and third character will catapult you very quickly to 200, and considering that's how you can get your other classes' exotic armor for the expansion, it's not a bad idea. That is the gist of leveling and how it works now. It is much more simplified. Just hang out and run stuff in the portal at your leisure. No more worrying about pinnacle sources, powerful sites, anything like that. No more weekly lockouts. Just pick some stuff that you want to play and go. If you have any other advice for your fellow gamers about leveling, feel free to drop it in the comments. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.